Well, I certainly agree with that, and I think that it's so difficult for people who, always used to dealing with dollars to realize that there is an organized effort to destroy the value of our currency. Now, there was a story, and we mentioned this afternoon on one of the news services, that according to a news service in Macedonia, that the Kremlin had reported that at the Bilderberger meeting, now you're not going to read any of this in the controlled media in America, but the Bilderberger meeting, of course, funnels out information to several sources, and they disseminate it to the American people, but they never tell the real truth. The story, according to the Macedonian news service, was that the Kremlin news service had said that the Bilderbergers had decided to destroy the value of the American dollar. What's that story all about? Do you think that could really be true?
Well, I think it could, and this may be the time that they've chosen to do that. And they know they're going to get hyperinflation, and they know they can't stop it. They're trying to keep everything together until they want to take everything down, and maybe the dollar is an international reserve currency. Maybe it's expendable at this point, and maybe this is the first shoe to fall, if you may, in the scheme of things. And so maybe the dollar in stages over the next perhaps year and a half or two will go to 40 from 79 approximately where it's at. And that would be against other major currencies. But you got to remember, while all that's going on, all these currencies, they're all fiat, with the exception of the euro, has some gold backing. And they're all going to get down versus gold and silver. And so being in currency is not the answer. Being in gold and silver related assets is the answer.
All right. So this is the thing. And what is really so interesting is some of the largest hedge funds, hedge funds headed by a man named John Paulson, who has recently invested $5 trillion in gold or gold-related assets. What are your thoughts on that? Isn't that going to begin to move the market?
Well, I think a lot of others have followed. I had a piece today that's going in Wednesday's issue, and it's about, I think it was Northwestern Life bought around $400 million worth of gold, and they're very happy with their investment. So I think you're seeing a lot of pension fund players starting to enter that arena, and there's only so much gold to go around. It's not an item that's in big supply, and nor neither is silver today. And so I think you're going to see a lot more, and there's probably a lot more institutions of one form or another who own gold and silver who are not making an issue out of it.
We'll be right back. Well, Bob, we've got 3 minutes for you to wrap up the program. You were just saying that, I was rather surprised to hear pension funds going into this, or insurance companies, but this would be a logical investment. You may not get a return, but at least you're not going to lose the value of your currency. And so many of the things that they've invested in, the stocks and the bonds, I was reading, I think the New York pension funds only lost 26%. They thought that they were doing great. They only lost 26%. If they'd been in gold, they would have doubled their money.
That's right, and some of them, like CalPERS and California Teachers, at one time were off 50%, and they're probably off 40% now, and that's horrendous. When they were making those kind of investments, I was writing about it. I says, if you're in there, in those plans, and you can get yourself out, do it. But one of the problems with plans is that you usually can't get out unless you quit your job. Some of them do let you borrow against the assets. It can be 20% or it can be 75%, and many of them don't let you borrow at all. And so you're trapped. And I don't think people for 1 second believe that they would be running into something like this in these pension plans when they got involved in them 5 or 25 or 35, 40 years ago.
Well, of course, a lot of the pension funds, at least in New York, I was reading, that they're going to start raising, what the people have to put in percent of their salary from, I think, about 4 or 5% up to 11%, as the state, because it doesn't have any money, cuts back on their donation to the pension fund. But people, have to participate. If they require 11% of your salary on top of all the other things they deduct for, you're going to have to put in 11% of your salary. And but the fact that the state is actually cutting back on their part of the pension fund, well, I think we can expect that. If the state doesn't have any money, they don't have an alternative. And all across America, the various state governments are becoming increasingly insolvent. Parting thought before we let you go, Bob.
Parting thought is, if you're in the market, get out with the exception of gold and silver stocks. And what you're watching here is a rally that's been conjured out of Wall Street with the government leading the pack. And it's not going to last. It's going down. They're not going to get away with what they got away with when the stock market in 2001 went down to 72.68 on a Dow Jones Industrial Average and then rallied it back up to 14,000. They don't have the power to do that anymore.
All right, Bob, we're out of time. God bless. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks so very much. Our guest has been Bob.